The White House declares the coronavirus pandemic over, despite the fact that cases are breaking records across America. More unrest and violence in Philadelphia over a police shooting of a black man. And Jon Stewart coming back to the anchor chair. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, October 28th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Good morning.
Good morning, Jill. How are you today?
I am okay. How are you?
I'm okay. Pretty okay. That's all we can hope for.
All right, let's get to some news. A day after installing a new Supreme Court justice, the Senate adjourned for 2 weeks, which basically shuts the door on any new stimulus bill before Election Day. The U.S. has reported a record 500,000 new cases of coronavirus over just the last week. As the White House's science office put out a press release that listed, quote, ending the COVID-19 pandemic as the top accomplishment of President Trump's first term. So a little bit bizarre. So basically, the virus is now spreading faster in the U.S. than at any point so far in this pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, wow. Just it's like living in a different reality from the White House. Pretty unbelievable. Chicago shutting down all indoor dining as of Friday. Bill de Blasio here in New York City, the mayor, he is urging New Yorkers not to travel for the holidays. A field hospital in Milwaukee just started accepting patients. That city's instituting new restrictions as well. Wisconsin now basically a straight up COVID hotspot. They're seeing record deaths, record hospitalizations, record new cases. We're in a bad place. I don't know what else to say. I did want to tell you, Jill, about this this funny story I had yesterday. I went to a doctor's appointment, and I thought of you because we always talk about sort of hygiene theater, or the idea of how people just sort of are doing these things to make it look like they're trying to stop the virus, but they don't really do much. And the woman at the front desk gave me one of the temperature checks, the little like the little gun that they put on your forehead, and it clocked me as having a temperature of 88 degrees. And
good.
I was like,
go to the hospital immediately.
Yeah. Well, I was like, I think that makes me clinically dead. But I don't think it makes me, have coronavirus. So I had to wait outside, and she had to redo it a bunch of times. And finally, they let me in when I clocked a normal temperature. But I thought of you and how we always talk about these, the crazy ways that without any real federal help, this is sort of all we can do, right?
That's really funny and disturbing at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know why my body temperature was 88 degrees. Hopefully, it just meant that the temperature thing was wrong.
A heart of ice, Carlo. Yeah. Okay, Philadelphia saw a second night of clashes, protests, and looting after the police killing of Walter Wallace Jr. Wallace's family has been pleading for calm in the streets following his death. Those calls, though, went unheeded. Crowds took to looting the neighborhood of Port Richmond, with police declaring the area around Aramingo Avenue a, quote, total loss. The National Guard's been deployed. The White House said it's standing by, claiming the unrest was a consequence of, quote, liberal Democrats' war against the police. There were protests and vandalism in New York City last night as well. Near you, Carlo, actually in Brooklyn, the NYPD says that 30 people were arrested.
Yeah, so if you're a little unfamiliar with sort of the genesis of this story, I'll just do a little quick background. So Wallace, 27-year-old black man, he was shot in a police confrontation on Monday in West Philadelphia. His family said that he was having a mental health crisis. He was bipolar, and they had called an ambulance to take him to the hospital. Police showed up, as they often do on ambulance calls. They demanded that he put down a knife that he was waving while sort of running around the street. He didn't. They then opened fire. They killed him right there in front of his family, in front of his home. The whole thing was caught on cell phone video, as these things pretty much always are now. So there's not a lot of actual dispute over what happened. It's pretty clear. He had the knife. They demanded he put it down. He didn't. They shot him. these videos just they're shocking in so many ways. But one of the things that always strikes me, especially in this case, is just how little time the police often spend trying to diffuse these situations. And I know that a lot of that has to do with they're not trained to do this, which is a whole nother situation. But I mean, these officers, like they basically came out, guns up, and 15 seconds later, this guy was dead. I mean, I'm not obviously, saying that I'm not saying that the looting is okay or anything like that, but it's just so depressing watching these videos.
I think that there is a real problem in terms of police training, especially when it comes to mental illness,
Yeah.
which is what this case was. As you mentioned, the family was just trying to get him help and get to the hospital. The looting, though, it like totally, unfortunately, it muddies the argument because now everyone's focused
Right.
on the looting. Um,
Yeah, it
and
does
with a
nobody
week
any
into
favor.
the
Right.
election, the idea of kind of this law and order message from the president, is that going to resonate more, given what's going on in Philadelphia and the video? I don't know, but just a
Which of
terrible
course Philly
situation.
is in Pennsylvania, which of course is
Exactly.
the tipping point state, the probably the most important state on Tuesday night. So yeah, we'll see.
6 days, meanwhile, until Election Day. With 70 million ballots already cast, more than half of the entire 2016 vote is already in. The early numbers heavily favor Democrats. Republicans, though, have been narrowing that early vote gap in battleground states like Florida.
Yeah, President Trump he has just been the number of rallies he's doing is astounding. He's ramping up to 5 or 6 of these open air rallies a day ahead of the weekend, and these things go for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, I wouldn't be able to do it to do all that. But it is really unclear to me if these events have done anything to actually move voters that weren't really already in his column. I mean, he seems like he's sort of preaching to the choir at this point. But we'll see. The Biden campaign, meanwhile, they have been dispatching President Obama to sort of be the guy who delivers the Trump critique. While Biden himself has kind of been taking the high road, talking about, quote, uniting the nation. Obama has been out there. I don't know if you've caught any of his stumping for Biden, but he looks like he's having a grand old time, I have to say, just needling President Trump and laughing and really just looking like he's enjoying himself. Sort of funny to watch.
He is, and he's like making jokes. He does look like he's
Yeah.
having a great time, which I guess is what happens after you leave, where you no longer are the president and it's not really
Right.
your race. And yeah, he can kind of play that role. He was saying, the president's complaining, saying COVID, COVID, COVID. That's all we're hearing on the news. And Obama's like, so basically he's jealous of the coronavirus coverage, is what
Yeah,
he's saying.
I, I did like that. Yeah.
Um,
Also, I have to say though, I'm surprised. Where's Michelle Obama been? She is the most popular, probably the most popular American, but she's definitely the most popular Democrat. Has she been? I haven't seen her out on the trail at all. I'm a little bit surprised by that. I don't know what she's up to. I know that she doesn't like doing this stuff, but I don't know. Seems like she should be out there on Biden's behalf.
Switching gears, the Gulf Coast once again bracing for a tropical landfall. Hurricane Zeta has reorganized and strengthened, and it's headed for a landfall along the northern Gulf Coast later today. Hurricane warnings are in effect from southeast Louisiana to the Mississippi-Alabama border, including all of metro New Orleans.
And the remnants of post-landfall Zeta, when it finally makes landfall and then sort of disintegrates, expected to smack right into a storm that is moving across the country right now. That means we're going to have a messy end of the week in the Northeast. The possibility of snow, Jill.
What?
Snow in the New York City area on Friday, as well as in Boston and New England. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be like real snow, but we may see some flakes. The entire East Coast, meanwhile, if you're basically living anywhere from the Florida Panhandle up to the Northeast, the next couple of days after today are just going to be a total washout. So just be prepared. Heavy rain Thursday into Friday.
Yikes. The snow, you're blowing my mind with the snow, Carlo. I'm
Oh
still
God,
living
it's
in
not even
like
November
the end
yet.
of
I
summer.
Right.
Okay, Los Angeles is the new title town, USA. Less than a month after the Lakers won the NBA championship, the Dodgers have now won the World Series. Los Angeles beat Tampa Bay 3-1 in Game 6, ending a 32-year title drought for the Dodgers. They've been on the brink of victory several times in recent years, but it was a victory as well for the MLB, which did put on a successful shortened season. At least in the beginning, it was looking kind of shaky. I didn't know if they were even going to get to this point.
I didn't either. I think that we talked about back in the summer after a couple of those teams had COVID outbreaks. We were like, "There's no way they're going to be able to pull this off," and they did. Look, they deserve. I think they deserve credit. They gave us baseball, and it was pretty good baseball, actually, all things considered. It was last night's celebrations tarnished a little bit, though, after the game. Dodgers third baseman Justin Turner was seen celebrating out on the field with his teammates, both with and without a mask on. That's important because he was pulled from the game in the middle of the game last night because his COVID test came back positive. So not great optics there. Meanwhile, Jill, LA County health officials say that the Lakers finals win back in early October coincided with a spike in COVID cases that they're now seeing, suggesting that watch parties and celebrations for the Lakers may have contributed, probably did contribute. So obviously that's another thing that we got to worry about again now that the Dodgers are champs.
There's concern in Michigan actually because this weekend Michigan and Michigan State play each other in football. So there is concern that as cases are climbing, that's the big rivalry in the state. What's that going to mean? Are there going to be parties and
Right.
Are people going to be traveling across the state? So.
Because usually, the bars would be slammed, right?
Oh
like
my
in Ann
gosh.
Arbor for
Michigan State is for in-state people. It's like,
Yeah.
For out-of-state people, it's Ohio, Michigan State, Ohio, Michigan. But if you're in the state of Michigan, it's those are the House divideds.
All right, so we got to pay attention to what happens this weekend. Keep an eye on that.
Yeah,
on
no,
Monday.
it's just like the whole idea of you don't know at the time, but you see it 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later,
Exactly,
you'll see a
yeah.
spike in cases.
Right.
Switching gears, some news on the tech and business front. Microsoft just had its most profitable quarter ever, lifted by its booming PC business, also their cloud and gaming divisions. Microsoft is one of a handful of companies hugely benefiting from this pandemic, which has accelerated the shift to cloud computing, with everyone from teachers to doctors now reliant on this ability to work remotely.
Incredible numbers from Microsoft yesterday. Meanwhile, a separate report that I saw last night when I was reading about the Microsoft earnings from a group called Tech Inquiry. They found just how much some of these big tech firms have been benefiting from the Trump tax cuts, which, remember, is Trump's probably signature domestic achievement over the last 4 years. So check this out. Apple, if you sort of adjust for the corporate tax rate before the Trump tax cuts, which were passed in, I believe, 2017 or 2018, maybe. Apple saving $12 billion a year, Microsoft saving $10 billion, Alphabet, Google saving about $8 billion. The list sort of goes on there. So I just thought that was a little bit interesting. It's not really relevant to Microsoft earnings particularly, but it's just like it has to do with, President Trump has been making these companies, the villainizing these companies, making them his punching bag on the campaign trail, but they're among the biggest beneficiaries of his policies. And these are companies that are staffed by people who mostly hate President Trump, but their bottom line is benefiting from his policies. It's almost like the real point of government is to protect corporations. I don't know.
By the way, 3 of tech's most well-known CEOs are going to be testifying today virtually in front of the Senate Commerce Committee. So Twitter's Jack Dorsey, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, and Sundar Pichai of Alphabet. This hearing is looking at a law that's known as Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. So it's usually just referred to as 230. If you hear that, it's referring to this line of this law that says tech companies or these online businesses are not responsible for the content that their users create. So it's really shielded a lot of these companies from some of the more controversial content on their sites. The real concern, though, here is if you get rid of Section 230, one of the unintended consequences, if it's repealed, is that it would actually crush smaller tech firms and startups. And that's because they don't have money or manpower to fight every lawsuit that could start over the content on their site. So the big guys are going to be fine, regardless. Like Facebook and Amazon and Google, they're going to be just fine. But there is a real question about what this would do to any type of small business or tech startup.
So Section 230 is interesting, and there's interesting arguments on both sides. The thing that I never have understood about this is why President Trump is so against it, because Section 230 is the reason why he is able to post. I mean, he is one of the biggest, this is just a fact, he is one of like the biggest generators of misinformation on social media. And without Section 230 is what protects his ability to do that, because, Facebook and Twitter and they don't have to worry that they're going to get sued because he puts something out there that is, inciting violence or whatever. So I feel like, I don't know if he doesn't understand that or if he just doesn't care, but I've never understood why he is against a law that literally protects him more than probably anybody else in America.
Well, I think that what you're touching on is the fact that lawmakers who are in charge of writing laws that would oversee this industry, they don't understand it. They genuinely, like they don't. When you hear their line of questioning, it's like it's actually embarrassing. They don't have a genuine understanding of what these laws are. What these companies do, how they make money, how they collect data. So, and both sides, Republicans and Democrats, equally don't understand it, and both have their own beefs with the tech industry. If they're, they equally loathe the tech industry, but just for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel bad for them because they're billionaires, but these CEOs who have to get trotted up in front of Congress every once in a while to just like listen to these 100-year-old senators ask them how they how they make money. It's just, God, it's like it's tough to watch.
Jon Stewart, by the way, has signed on to host a current events series on Apple TV Plus. The multi-year contract will give Stewart, who's of course the former host of The Daily Show, he's going to get a multi-year first look deal to produce other content as well for Apple TV Plus. Carlo, you and I did not know each other in the days of The Daily Show. I feel like you must have been a big Jon Stewart fan. Yeah, exactly, the Jon Stewart Daily Show days.
Yeah. I mean, I was. Though I have to say, I always preferred Stephen Colbert. I loved.
Really?
Remember the Stephen Colbert, the original Stephen Colbert show back when he was funny and he was doing like the
Colbert Report.
The Colbert Report. I loved that. I thought that was so good. Yeah, I mean, look, Jon Stewart, what he's done for 9/11 responders alone in the year since he went off the air is just remarkable, and he deserves a ton of credit for just waging that fight, a fight that is insane that we even needed to have. I don't know if he still got the swag though. I don't know if he's got it for the current moment. I feel like he's sort of like past his prime. I don't know. Maybe I could.
Why
do
you think
wrong.
That? Just because there's been so many new faces, or the?
I mean, it's just like I don't know. He did a very good job in sort of like the Bush years and the Obama years of sort of pointing out like the hypocrisy of politicians, with very clever like video editing and just like the way that he structured that show. But it's like we're sort of beyond that, right? Like there's no that's why it's just so hard to satirize. I think the Trump administration in a lot of ways, and I think why SNL has such a hard time is because in a lot of ways, like what is there to satirize? Like it's not even possible to make fun of it in a lot of ways. It's so out of bounds of like, reality. I don't know. I could be wrong. I still like him.
For me, it's just that I think everybody's he invented it and now everybody does it.
Yeah, right.
So that's the whole, for me, that's the whole thing is like, it's not going to seem as groundbreaking. By the way, we don't even know what his show is, though. I mean, I don't even know if that's what he's doing. I'm a huge Jon Stewart fan as a person. Like I wasn't a huge Daily Show person, but he's
a great guy.
He's a great guy.
He absolutely is. By the way, this is a huge coup for Apple, just in their streaming ambitions. If you get a big name like this, that's going to get people to buy subscriptions, which is what they need.
Speaking of streaming, one of the most popular docuseries right now is The Vow on HBO Max. This series tells the story of the NXIVM group. It's an alleged sex cult based in Albany, New York. Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, was sentenced to 120 years in prison yesterday. That sentence astounded just about everyone. A federal judge handed down the sentence in Brooklyn, where he has been behind bars since he was convicted of racketeering, sex trafficking, and child porn charges. Prosecutors say he's been unrepentant, and he continues to proclaim his innocence.
Did you watch The Vow?
I did not, no.
No. Sometimes I laugh when I ask you questions like, did you watch this series? And I want you to be like, no, I have a child. Like, I have a job and a baby. Like, there's not a lot of docu-series watching in the Wagner household, which I get. I did watch actually, and I thought it was okay. But I don't think it did a particularly good job of prosecuting the case against NXIVM. And if anybody listening watched it, I'd love to talk about it, because I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about it. The prosecutors nailed Raniere on RICO charges mostly, which is the charges that the government created to go after the mafia back in the day. But when you watch the series, it wasn't entirely clear what they did that was illegal. It was a bunch of adults who were probably pretty disturbed practicing what appeared to be consensual behavior. That said, that's not to let Raniere off the hook, because one of the specific charges against him was sexual abuse of a minor, and that person spoke very powerfully at his sentencing. So I don't, these stories, they always just make me wonder how you could get involved in something that is just so obviously a scam, at least from the outside. I always just mostly feel bad for everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't really know that much about it, and I actually, this is one of those, I'm not upset that I haven't seen the docuseries.
Yeah,
sometimes you tell me about stuff, and I'm like, all right, yeah. I gotta go watch it. All right, well, that is a wrap on a busy news day. That's what you need to know for Wednesday, October 28th.
Thanks, guys.